Aloha Friday, everyone. It's the Aloha Friday show with the Sandwich Islands Social Network. I am Kamaka Brown, your cordial host, and so glad you're able to join us today. And as always, we have interesting guests on the show. All have some connection to Hawaii, and today is no different. We have a wonderful guest, and we'll be back with you in just a moment. Aloha Friday, everyone. Hey, aloha. How's it? Welcome, welcome. Glad to have you with us. We are right here in your ear. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram. Hey, we're all over the place. And we're delighted that you're able to join us today. We invite you to be part of our conversation. No scared. Go ahead and sign in. Tell us where you are signing in from. Give us your aloha. You want to kind of send a message to our guests, please feel free to do that if you're watching on any of the social media platforms today. We welcome your comments. Right now, with no further delay, I'm so excited to have this guest with us from her home. Pretty close to Diamond Head on the island of Oahu is educator, congresswoman, mentor, legislator, women's advocate, Pat Saiki. Aloha, good morning, Pat.
Good morning. Good morning. Good to talk to a local boy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I know you are a former school teacher, so if I lapse into pidgin every now and then, no scold me, cause
Oh no,
cause cause
I never scold.
cause not your slipper. I know, not your slipper
Yeah,
now.
no, no stink.
No, because my first language is pidgin, my second language is English. So every now and then I slip into it, even though I live on the continent now.
That's right.
You can take the boy out of the aina, but you cannot take the pigeon out of the boy. I don't care. I don't care.
Never happened.
So welcome. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation to be on the Aloha Friday show with us. And big shout out, by the way, to brother Floyd Takeuchi. I know Floyd is in the wings over there. Mahalo, Floyd, for helping get everything all set up and interacting with our production assistant, Mr. Nate Jones, who is also a Midpack alumni, and so is Floyd. So those Midpack boys are on it today
Good.
and helping to make this show possible today as well. So thanks, Floyd, and big mahalo to Nate. Um, you are a Hilo girl, born
Right.
Hilo side, third generation American Japanese family in Hilo. You were 16 years of age when that tsunami when hit Hilo.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you and your family in Hilo. There was no sirens going off and stuff.
Yeah.
How did the Hilo people know back in 1946? I believe, yeah, 46, when that tidal wave when hit April Fool's Day, yeah, April
April Fool's
1st.
Day. Yeah.
How did anybody know about it or what?
Well, there were some radio calls
Ah,
and warning,
mm,
but the police were very active in warning people that the storm was coming.
yeah.
But we didn't know how serious it was going to be until it actually we heard it coming in. The noise of the wave hitting the buildings
Wow.
coming in. And so naturally, at 16 years of age, we rushed over to see it.
Yeah.
And my parents almost had conniptions. So we all rushed down to watch the wave come in. It was devastating, just
Oh,
especially because we had relatives that lived in that area where the
yeah.
water hit the hardest. And I must tell you, there's a very interesting story. My uncle Rango was a young man about 25 years old, and the area in which he lived was oh, surrounded by the ocean on one side and the river on the backside.
Hmm.
So the people who lived between were caught with the wave hit. So there was one building in that area, the Coca-Cola building, and so Uncle Rango jumped up on the roof of the Coca-Cola building and called to all the people to come into the building to
Oh,
save themselves.
oh
And
my.
he saved an awful lot of lives, but
Whoa.
there were hundreds and hundreds of people who died that day, caught in that tsunami. And
Yeah.
those were conditions that we were worried about when the wave hit. Not so
Uh-huh.
much because we could see it, but
Yeah.
for these people who were caught in it, it was devastating. So it was horrible.
Yeah, we're
Um,
looking at some pictures from that day,
oh yeah,
in which 159 folks passed away in that flood, and
yes,
also the wave hit Lapahoihoi, I think
yes,
elementary school, and a teacher and about 50 something students, right, were
right,
in a
that's right.
path that day
Oh
too.
yeah,
My goodness, my
yeah.
goodness. Um, so, but you guys was curious. You went down to go take a look, yeah. Yeah,
Oh yeah, oh
yeah.
yeah. We had to go take a look. We did all those crazy things when we were young people.
Oh,
Uh, you know, we did all kinds of mischievous things too. Yeah, but those were the good old days when you could get
yeah.
away with it.
Your dad uh, played tennis. He was a tennis instructor. He was a tennis professional.
Yeah,
Um,
he was not a professional, but he
oh,
was a very good tennis player.
aha. Okay.
Outstanding. He trained an awful lot of people, including me,
Mm-hmm.
uh, to be good tennis players. He always said that even if we're women, we can still play tennis.
Yeah. 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 If anybody has any uh, questions or any ideas or anything you want to learn about about Pat Saiki and um, her story. Up in the upper left-hand corner of our screen is the website patsaiki.com. Lots of information there, interesting bits of information you would like to learn about Congresswoman Pat Saiki. Really, 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 really interesting. Um, you very
Do you notice the title of the book? The title of the book is Pat Saiki, who is basically a woman in the house.
There it
See, a
is.
woman in the house.
Yes.
And the reason why the title is A Woman in the House is because when I ran for office for the first time, there were three women in the state house legislature of 51 members. 25 out of 25 in the Senate, there was only one woman. So there were a total of four women in the legislature of 51 members in the House, 25 in the Senate. And my feeling was that more women should be elected to office.
But
So I,
you were busting through the boys club here.
oh,
Um,
of course. And the boys knew it.
where did that tenacity come from, Pat? I mean,
My
you are,
husband.
well, pardon me, but you are a take no prisoners. As I read about, take no prisoner. You say what's on your. I mean, coming from an Asian family, a
Right.
female, that goes against type with the generation of the 40s and 50s and then entire, in which you don't
Yeah.
do that.
That's,
Where did that come
that's
from? Where did that come from, Pat?
my father. My father,
Aha.
who was a tennis player, who told us we can do anything we want, we can be anything we want. All we have to do is pursue it, get an education, and go for it.
Mm.
Pay the, pay whatever price you have to pay, but get it
Mhm.
done. And so I knew I had his support. And when I met my husband, I knew that he would also be of the same spirit. And so I had the support that I needed.
Beautiful, beautiful. Um, you have, over the years, left your mark in a number of trailblazing projects, legislation, initiatives that you stood strongly for, you're very passionate about. And I want to read a quote, and I want to get your response. Now, this is a quote from you. There was a time when a woman could not have a credit card in her own name, A woman couldn't have a loan in her own name. She couldn't start a business in her own name. A woman was considered secondary to the financial world, and things had to change.
Right.
Mm,
Exactly. Exactly
mm.
right. And it was from experience. And when I learned this was true, I was determined that this was going to be changed.
Now
If
let me
anything,
just jump in just for a second. This is in the 60s and 70s. This is not way before our
no,
time. This is in in the 60s and 70s now, which
that's
is
right. In the 70s,
ah,
especially, because I got elected in 68. And that's when I realized all of this was true. So in 1970, I made, I overtly worked to change the law and to change the attitudes of the members of the legislature to realize that women had contributions to make. And it was not so much for me as much as for what I would call fairness.
mhm, mhm. So, what was it that you did that made a difference in how women or women's rights are viewed? What did you do?
Well, it's very interesting because I happened to be very fortunate when President Nixon organized what they call the Women's, uh, shall we say, organization to better the status of women in the United States. He asked me to sit on his commission, and that was a entree to national legislation. So I supported the Equal Rights Amendment and looked
Mhm,
at all of the reasons why the Equal Rights Amendment should be considered as part of the national constitution.
mhm,
And through that opening, then I used it to actually support and push the Equal Rights Amendment in the Hawaii Constitution, and I got that passed as as an amendment.
mhm,
And with that, armed with that, I began to look at all the laws that were on the books. There was a lady by the name of Pat Putman. She worked in the Legislative Reference Bureau, and I talked with her. She volunteered and looked at all of the legislation that was on the books in the state of Hawaii in the 1970s and offered all kinds of changes to those laws to make things equal. And so I put them together in what I called the Equal Rights Package for my introduction. There were 28 pieces of legislation. Well,
wow.
26 of them passed. And they had to do with everything from uh, allowing women to have equal status in banking, in business, in the economy, in everything. So it opened the doors
Mhm.
for the possibility of women being able to be active on equal status with men. So to the point where they changed the names and titles of instead of firemen, they became firefighters. Instead of policemen, they became police officers. You know, they went so far as to change the uh, the definitions to allow for women to have equal status.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun in those days too, and it was easy to convince the men who were mostly Democrats.
Mm.
I approached them on a personal basis. If this were your daughter, or your
Ah.
wife, or your cousin, or your aunt, would you want to vote against this? Oh, no, no, no. Well, then sign right here.
I
And the
love it.
only way to make it work is to go to the budget committee and say, now, if we were to pass this, but we don't provide the funds to back it up, doesn't make any sense, does it?
Mm.
No. Okay, then let's put it in the budget. And that's how we worked.
Wow.
course, of course, Floyd will tell you that he was a reporter then.
Oh.
He knows that, yeah, he knows that I did not get credit for a lot of this work
Mm.
because
Mm.
I'm a member of the minority.
Mm.
So Democrats used my legislation converted it to their language and introduced it as their bill.
Mm.
And I supported it because I believed in what was being said.
It was the right thing to do. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
the right thing to
I've,
do.
I've got a great picture of you and your dad.
Yeah,
Ah, you know,
yeah. That's when I ran for the Senate.
right there, pounding the pavement, man, with his daughter, um,
Yeah.
to support you. Um, indeed, indeed.
Oh yeah. He walked one side of the street and I walked on the other. And on my side of the street, the ladies would say, "Where's your father?" I say, "He's on the other side of the street. I want to see him." I think he was more votes for me than I did.
Here we have Marty Burns, a good friend of ours of this show. Good morning, everyone. Aloha, Marty. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Marty is a retired high school football coach here in Southern California. Yes, he worked with a lot of the local youth. Here's Kay Bennett from the West Wing of the Holly saying, "Mahalo for your service and foresight." Indeed, indeed.
Yes,
Yeah.
because when it comes to athletics now, there's another area in
Hmm.
which I took a very active role. Patsy Mink at the national level with Edith Green of Oregon passed Title IX, which amended the Constitution to guarantee that women would have equal status in athletics. And
Wow.
that's fine. It's fine. It passed. And as far as the state of Hawaii is concerned, it's fine. But that doesn't mean it's going to happen. It has to happen at the local level.
Mhm.
And if you looked at the University of Hawaii at that time, all of the funding for women's athletics went through the men's athletic program. And the men decided how much would go to the women's athletic program. And they were the ones to decide who the women's athletic director would be. So I said, well, that's not the intent of Title IX. So I introduced legislation and got it passed through the Higher Education Committee and the Budget Committee. And we created a separate women's athletic program and created an athletics director, Donna Thompson, who was the first women's athletic director. The men were so scared because they thought the funding would be deleted
Yeah.
when the women group would emerge. Well, it turns out the Rainbow Wahinis made more money than they ever did. So it was the Rainbow Wahinis that really held up the athletic department, and it was the women's athletic program that really grew.
Yeah.
And so things changed then, and
Yeah.
the other yeah, then the DOE, the Department of Education, realized that this was true. It should be made uh, a point in the public system as well. So that's how the women's athletics programs were set up.
Look at
And
that Wahine volleyball became
oh
so.
yeah,
Oh my goodness! And even now, basketball, the NBA.
that's right.
With the women.
And these
Uh,
are little things that I never stood up and said, "Well, I did this and I did that." No,
mm,
that's not the point. The point is it was done because it's
mm,
the only fair thing to do.
yeah.
And people like Floyd, who were reporters, then reported it that way.
Hmm.
And so at least I knew that it was being recognized
Yeah. Kay Bennett says it took decades for full acceptance, but you had your fingerprints all over that
all
building.
over. Yes, all over.
Um,
And don't worry, when I walked in the room, the Democrats said, "Oh boy, here comes trouble."
your dad is smiling and so proud of you, because you had said that he, way back when there even was that word, that he was a feminist,
Yes,
even before that word became a buzzword.
right.
um,
He was
be,
the original feminist.
is there, yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
was. Yes.
uh, and so you
And
had, how many in your family? You had three sisters.
girls. Three, three of us girls.
You
Yeah,
girls, okay.
yeah, three girls. That's it. So, and he called us boys. He said, "My three boys."
But you were both of, all of the girls were so supportive of each other, getting an
Yes.
education, getting
Oh yeah.
a career
We helped
going,
each other.
right?
We helped each other a lot.
Because
So,
education was so expensive as well.
oh yes, oh yes, and it was really quite interesting that at one point, the Big Five that time were controlling downtown Honolulu, the Oahu. And one of the big companies was AmFac Inc. And so one day in my office is Mr. Uh, oh, what's his name? Uh, yeah, Henry Walker. Henry Walker, the president of AmFac, is sitting in my office. He asked me if I would not consider sitting on the board of directors of AmFac Inc. The fact is that no Hawaii person was on any of the boards of the Big Five in
Mm,
those days.
wow.
It is wow, is right. Much less a woman, much less a woman. And so I looked at him and I said, "Well, this is quite an honor. I'll have to ask my father first." He said, "Your father?" Yeah. Didn't you know my father worked for you for AmFac Inc.? He's been a staffer for AmFac for all these years and supported me. Oh my God. He says, by all means, please call your father. So I called Dad. And of course, Dad says, My God, how could you tell my boss that you have to sit on his board? I said, That's the way to do it. That's the Japanese way to do it. Oh, you always acknowledge your parents first.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
so that's how I sat on the board of AmFac Inc. Was the first woman, first local person to sit on a board of the directors of a major corporation. Soon after, Jack Magoon of Hawaiian Airlines asked me to sit on his board, so I
Uh-huh.
also sat on his board. And interestingly, I was a member of those boards not because I'm a Republican that supports only big business. That's not the point. The point I was joining them is I was breaking the barrier and opened the doors for other people to become members.
Hmm.
And and I've always been very proud of that.
Yeah. Working your way up, you were also a flight attendant on Aloha Airlines.
That's
Um,
right.
I should
I
say
worked, I worked my way through college.
there was no free ride. You had to work your way through this, right?
Doggone right.
Ah,
I worked part time, weekends, holidays, and when the volcano erupted, I was on duty. And
wow.
my parents were absolutely petrified that I would work on as an airline stewardess when the volcano erupted because in those days we fly into the crater. We can't do that anymore, but we did in those days. But
I
that's
get,
how I earned. And we had extra pay. We had double pay because they were hazardous
oh,
pay.
hazardous pay. I
Yeah,
could just
hazardous pay.
I could just see your dad. First, you run down to go look at the tidal wave, and then you fly
Yeah,
into the volcano. What am I gonna do with you?
yeah, yeah. What am I going to do? That's true. Well, fortunately, I was lucky in that I never got into trouble, and things worked out that I could pay my way through college and earn enough afterwards. I became the first local teacher, full-time teacher at Punahou School. John Fox, who was president of Punahou School at the time, came to me at the university and asked me to be part of the faculty. He
Wow.
said, We have never hired a local person to be on the faculty of Punahou School. We always brought in mainland teachers to come in. And I want you to be the first one. So I did. I said, but I haven't even graduated. He said, no, this is after you graduate. So the day after the graduation, I was part of the faculty at Punahou School. But
Wow.
yeah, oh wow is right.
Um,
I was fortunate in that so many people were kind enough to give me a chance to prove myself.
mhm, mhm. Um, high school teacher, mother of five, U.S. Congresswoman. Um, you are quoted as saying that politics is not a spectator sport.
That's right.
What did you mean by that?
It's not a spectator sport because you are part of the decision making group that decides what the future holds for us. And politics is a means by which you achieve that success. And it's a matter of being able to convince others that your thinking is the proper way to go. And that's been my life. So
Indeed.
politics to me is just a means by which you achieve success.
Mhm, mhm. Here's C. Honda. Here lives here in Southern California. She says, "Aloha, Pat and Kamaka." I see. Welcome aboard. Nice to have you with us. For those of you who just joined us, we have the pleasure of speaking with Congresswoman Pat Saiki from her home on Oahu, and we're just talking story. We just talking about how tenacious Pat Saiki. Um, she take no prisoners. There was a word I remember that politicians would run by. No shibai. I don't hear that. There's no
No, she's
shibai.
no troublemaker. That's what she is. That's all she is. When she walks in the room, there's trouble.
There's trouble. Oh, here
Yeah,
comes Pat Saiki.
yeah, that's right. She's going to upturn something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, you had, and here's Marty. Marty says, listening to Pat, I can tell that no is not part of a vocabulary. That's right.
Right. That's right. Exactly right.
um, something that continues to strike, and well, we want to talk about this when we come back from the break over here. Um, there's a couple of things when we talk about advocating for women's rights and for women's rights. I want to talk about the with your husband, the late Dr. Psyche, um, with the trauma center, the trauma center that is at, I believe, is at Queens Hospital.
No,
Um,
Kapila Hospital.
Kapiolani. I was born in Kapiolani. Why didn't I remember that?
Yeah,
Yeah, how
Kapila
rude. I,
Women's and Children's Hospital.
I want to talk about that when we come back from the break because that also has your fingerprints all over it,
Oh
Pat.
yes. Oh yes.
and I want to talk about Bill, your support for Bill HR 442 when we come back from the break. So stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back after these a few videos for you. And we're talking with Pat Saiki, and we'll be right back. Oh yeah, next week Friday, a week from today, Brian Valoria, an Olympic boxer, and quite an interesting fellow. We're going to be talking with him next week as a boxing champ coming from the islands as well. You just joined us. Welcome back. We're talking with Congresswoman Pat Saiki, and such an interesting story that she has to tell, more than we can ever spend the time with. But good fun, though. If you want to learn more about Pat, upper left-hand corner, patsaiki.com. You can learn about her book. We want to talk about her book a little bit more before we go. And also, lower right-hand corner is sandislands.org. We are a 501c3 nonprofit that supports Hawaiians at heart, and Pacific Islanders away from their island home. And we're based out of Southern California, but our heart is in the Aina. That's exactly where Pat is today, at the foot of Diamond Head. How's the weather looking? Looking like it's a beautiful day outside?
Well, it's a little cloudy today.
Cloudy today. Okay. Um, so yet you make me jealous. Okay, you could have said
Oh,
it's really bad. It's storming, but that's okay. That's all right. It's okay. um, I wanna talk to you about your late husband, Dr. Saiki, the conversations that you had when victims of domestic abuse would come through his care, victims of rape would come through his care, and you as a women's advocate. There was some disconnect that was happening. Tell us about that, and what led to what is now known as a trauma center over at Kapiolani Children's
well,
Hospital.
first of all, my husband and I were very close. We had many hours of what I call pillow talk, where we exchanged ideas and exchanged concerns. One day he came home and he told me, "There's something you've got to do. You've got to do it." He said, "Women who are being raped or sexually assaulted, insulted, are taken to the morgue to be examined by the physician there, and the
Mm,
police go to the morgue to talk to the victims and treat them as though they were perpetrators." He said, "This is not fair for those women who have been hurt. They have been violated." We at Kapiolani Hospital are considering creating a sex abuse center and treatment center uh, to take care of these women who need emotional and physical care, medical care, not be insulted and uh, interrogated by police at the morgue. The only thing is, Pat, we can't set it up without any funding. So, is there anything you can do to help us? I said, "My God, I didn't know about this. Well, let's look into this. We have to do something. We can't just let it go and let these women be taken off to morgue." And so I got together with Pat Putterman and the Legislative Reference Bureau, and we drafted up legislation. And this is to create the Sexual Abuse Center and arrange for the budgeting for that uh, entity. And I took it down to the House of Representatives and saw my colleagues and said, "If this were your mother or your daughter or your aunt or your whatever relative you may have, would you want that person to be taken to the morgue to be examined?" Oh my God, they had no idea that this was going on. I said, well, then you want to correct it? Yes, let's correct it. Sign it right here. Sign this bill right now, right now. And they would sign it. My God, that thing passed unanimously and went through the budget committee like you couldn't believe. So
Wow.
fast, made your head swim. And so the abuse center was created for Kapilani Hospital to to uh, not create, but to be able to develop into a real program. And then, of course, we went to the neighbor islands. The victims there were treated at the fire stations. Well, you know, sex abuse centers should be extended to the neighbor islands as well. So we amended the State Medical Act to include the sex abuse center so that all these women who are abused on the neighbor islands would have the kind of treatment that they were having in Honolulu. So that was a big change in the treatment of women who were being accused and insulted. And till today, I think everyone is very relieved that at least women will have someplace to go when they are abused.
You know, um, I think your middle name should be Panasonic because Panasonic's name was slightly ahead of his time. Panasonic, slightly ahead of his time. Pat Saiki, slightly ahead of her time.
So it was actually my husband. My husband. See, he also was helpful in setting up the abortion law in the state of Hawaii.
Oh,
Oh, yes. What happened here is my husband was OBGYN.
okay.
So at 2 o'clock in the morning, we'd have a phone call and he'd wake me up and he'd say, "You have to come with me." I said, what for? He says, "I need your help." My patient made a choice. She decided to have an abortion and she went to one of these coat hanger artists who've screwed up and she is now bleeding. She can't stop the bleeding and she called me for help. I've got to go to the office and help her stop the bleeding, but I can't put on the lights because the police will then notice that there's something wrong. Besides that, up to that point, it was uh, all the physicians who were giving treatment to cases like this were guilty of a felony.
Hmm.
So I said, "But you know, Dad, you be committing a felony by helping this woman." He said, "What do you expect me to do? Lie here and let her bleed to death? Come on, let's go." So I said, "Okay, well, then if you're going to be charged with a felony, I'll be charged with a felony. Let's go." So off we went down to his
Wow.
office, and I held the flashlight and held it while he
Hmm.
attended to her to
Wow.
stop the bleeding.
Oh my.
And then the next day, I went to my desk and decided we've got to do something about this. We
Mhm.
can't let women be put through this experience and let the physicians who are totally innocent and trying to do their job of saving a life to be accused of a felony because they helped somebody stay alive. So we drafted up legislation,
Mhm.
and fortunately, Senator Vince Yano on the Senate side had already thought about this, had already had an experience, and he naturally said, "Well, let's join hands, and I have legislation that I can introduce on my side if you can provide it in the House side, and let's work together." So we did. And then we took that legislation to the governor, Burns, and he understood our concern. The woman had a choice. She made the choice. It's her body. She made the choice. Right or wrong, it's not up to us to decide what she should have done. But once it was done, the people who helped her should not be punished for what was to transpire. And so he said, religiously, I cannot join you by signing the legislation, I will let it become law without my signature. And he
Hmm.
did.
Wow.
So we did pass it. We're the first state in the United States to pass that legislation to allow for women to be excused from charges of felony in case of an abortion
Mhm.
for whatever reason.
Yeah.
We stated it has to be within a certain time and so forth. But it did pass. But it created quite a stir, you can
Yeah.
imagine.
Sure. Yeah. You know, everybody, Pat, everybody has you may not know this, but everybody has a superpower, okay? Everybody has a superpower. I've decided that this statement over here applies to Pat Saiki. It says, she has the ability to affect positive change through groundbreaking legislation while navigating through tough political environment illustrates her special gift for public service. That's your superpower, Pat. That's your
Wow,
superpower,
that's flattering.
right? No, I
That's
don't mean to
flattering.
flatter. I don't mean to flatter you. No shibai here. This is straight. This is straight. And just like Marty said, Marty Burns, a retired football coach, says, "No is not in your vocabulary. This is the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do, and
That's right.
it should happen." Yes. Wow. 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 So you overturned the status quo to become a state legislature, U.S. Congresswoman. You headed up the U.S. Small Business Administration. An effective Republican in a decidedly Democratic state, but still you were able to work with your partners across the aisle to
Oh
effect
yes.
positive change. And that
Oh
is
yes. Oh yes.
historic. That is historic. You know? Yeah.
Yeah. I ran for governor,
You did.
and yeah, I ran for governor and lost. It was a very curious situation where Senator Matsunaga died in the month of May of an election year.
Mm.
Okay, and Representative Akaka, who was my, uh, shall we say, alternate Democrat House member, was appointed to Matsunaga's seat. So he became the incumbent. And here we were in May. And so the forces at B asked me to run for the Senate because I was there and I had received a lot of publicity. And the president called me in and asked me to run for the Senate. And so I said, This is May. I've got to raise $5 million. We'll get the money for you. I'll get the senators to join hands, and we'll raise the money for you, and I will do whatever I can to help you. I'll even come to Hawaii and hold fundraisers for you,
Mm.
and see what we can do to get you elected. So I did. I talked to my husband again. My husband said, "Look, why did you run for office? You didn't run for office so that you can move into higher office and do whatever you want to do. You're running for office because you want to do good. If you win, you win. You lose, you lose. What have you lost? You haven't lost anything.
Mm.
So if you run for the governorship and you lose, you haven't lost anything. You gave it a try." So I said, well, okay, if that's the attitude. And my children were the same way. My children, all five of them, were very supportive. And they said, Mom, do what you have to do. If you feel that you can win, give it a try. If you lose, what the heck? We'll have a mother. So I did run. And unfortunately, of course, I lost that one. That's when I was appointed to head up the. Then the day after the election and I lost, I got the phone call. And my daughter answered the phone. She said, Mom, the president wants to talk to you. I said, What? The president of what? she,
President,
she got
President
the phone.
AMFAC.
President of what? She says, Mom, it's the president of the United States. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Talk to him. And he asked me, I'd like you to come back to Washington. We need you up here. And so, which of the positions would you like? And he offered me quite a few positions. I said, I want the small business administration because Hawaii has the greatest number of small businesses. He says, you've got it. So you come on over.
This was
And that's
President
how I
Bush.
got.
President Bush.
Yes, President Bush.
The
And I
first
said,
Bush.
okay, that'll be okay. In the meantime, of course, President Bush did his job. He came to Hawaii. He held fundraisers for me. His wife was marvelous. She did great for me. And the one thing that I asked him to do, I said, this is beyond what you'd probably get as a request. But just because I want this so badly, please stop the bombing of Kaho'olawe. They're
Mm.
bombing the hell out of Kaho'olawe, and it's over. That whole incident of using the island for bombing practice is over. So stop it.
Stop it.
Yeah. He turned to his assistant and said, "Look this up." Came back with the answer that yes, it was declared to be used by the president at that time and can be reversed.
Yeah, that
So
was
he re-
Eisenhower. That was Eisenhower back in the 50s. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
within 2 months, the bombing of Kaho'olawe stopped, and he was never really given credit for that,
Mm.
but he did.
Mm. Yeah.
He held up to that promise and stopped the bombing of Kaho'olawe. I'm very proud of that
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was especially as important to the Hawaiian people.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Here's Greg Lum. Hey, brother Greg. He says everything's going well. What an inspirational woman. He's inspired. Greg. Greg is my classmate at Roosevelt. We went to Roosevelt High School together, and he lives here in Southern California. Um, all right, now something else that really stood out for me as I was going through it, and this had to do with HR 442, which was a measure with had bipartisan support, and it called for an official apology to the Japanese Americans who were incarcerated during the war and some reparations. Help us talk
Yes.
us through that, how that all came about, Pat.
Yes. It's called the Civil Liberties Act, and that was the one that Republicans were holding up for many years until I convinced them. You know, I told them fasten their seatbelts. I was going to give them a ride like they never had, and they came across all right, and it finally passed. Okay, so it passed, and they were going to have a ceremony to have to. Yeah, they were going to have a ceremony, but the president was not going to sign it.
Oh,
He was going to let it become law without his signature. So
oh.
his the press, his assistants called me and said, "Could you please call the president yourself and ask him to sign the bloody bill? It's important for us to have his signature, and this has got to be done properly because it is an apology,
Yeah.
and we do have compensation." Minimal as it would be $20 a person, but
Yes.
it will be at least some kind of payment
It was 20,000, yeah? Or
per
20,000. Okay.
child, everything. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. And compared to what these people lost
Hmm.
on the years that they were interned, they called it interned. I call them, they were in concentration camps. That's where
Yeah.
they were.
Yeah.
They had police guarding these camps.
Hmm.
And that's not what you do in internment.
Yeah.
You know, you do that in compensation. So anyway, uh, he did finally agree that he will sign it.
This is
And
Ronald. This is President Reagan.
yeah, President
Yeah.
Reagan.
Okay.
But he said, "You, I want Pat Saiki to stand right there next to me when I sign it. She's gonna get the pen for this."
Oh
And,
my.
and so that's why you see the picture. And this picture has been all over the world, at the Smithsonian, all over Japan, everywhere. When you see the Civil Liberties Act, where
Uh-huh.
the American government, with the President of the United States apologizing to all those interned Americans of Japanese ancestry
Hmm.
who were unceremoniously and unconstitutionally interned
Hmm.
during the war.
I
And
have,
that is
wow.
everywhere. It's on the
Yeah,
back of my book.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I had that picture, and I'm looking for it as we speak over here, and I'm apologizing that I'm not able to bring it up here. But I did have it, and Floyd did send it to me, and I'm so sorry, Floyd. I can't pull it up at this time, but that was a historic picture of you standing right
Yes.
there with,
Yes.
yeah, with
President.
with the president, and that in itself is so amazing.
Oh,
Uh,
oh yeah. It's amazing. He insisted. He was the one that requested it.
is that right?
He says, "Oh yeah." He says, "She put it straight to me how
Uh-huh.
important it is."
Uh-huh.
So he says, "I acknowledged it."
Yeah.
Those are fascinating experiences that I
Hmm.
will always remember,
Hmm.
and I'm glad I'm sharing it with you and your audience because
Absolutely. That's
very
beautiful.
very few people know about the details on this.
Hmm.
I mean, they don't read about all the private conversations between me and the president of the United
Hmm.
States.
Yeah. So this was in 1987.
Yeah.
We were signed to support this bill, HR 442. Um,
Yep.
and it was called 442 for a reason, right? It was, you just didn't pick that number
That's
out of
right.
the air here. Why was it called 442, Pat?
But the battalion's name, Battalion 442. Uh,
442nd,
yeah, 442nd.
Japanese
That's where
American.
Senator Inoue lost his arm.
Hmm.
Remember, and
Yes, yes, yes.
Senator Tsunaga was hurt, and quite a few people died.
Yeah.
They-
Here's Nate. Here's Nate. Aloha, Nate. Thank you for being part of the show over here. He says, "Mahalo for coming on the show. Punahou has had a long list of notable alumni. During the years of your teaching there, did you have any students who later became well known besides Floyd Takeuchi? Oh no, he didn't go to Punahou. He went to Midpack.
There's another reporter, Denby Fawcett
Oh,
is her
Denby
name.
Fawcett
Yes,
to
she
Punahou.
she was in the fifth. She was in fifth grade at
Uh
the
huh.
time I was there, and till today she remembers because
Uh
she
huh.
shows up at many of my press conferences and we had conversations.
Uh
And she remembers clearly how things were in those days when
huh.
Miss Fukuda used to run around in her shorts. At,
Miss Fukuda.
yeah,
Uh,
Miss Fukuda.
Nate says, I remember President Bush came to Pearl Harbor for the 50th anniversary of the attack,
That's right.
December 7th, 1991. Yeah, we
That's
were
right. That's right. I came
so
with him.
um,
Yeah,
as well. Oh my goodness. Some amazing stories and wonderful recollections. You continue to be an advocate for women, minorities, those less fortunate,
ab-
taking special interest in elder care.
that's right.
Um, right? So still
That's right.
now, even though you have left the political world, if you will. Well, I don't know. You haven't really left. I think you continue to make those. I bet you still make those phone calls on anything that you.
You know,
I just figured I can see the administrative assistant secretary said, "One moment,
that's right.
I have Pat Saiki on line one," and the person saying,
Yeah,
okay."
okay.
and
Trouble.
and it's also what now, Pat? What what?
But now,
And it probably always starts with, I was just thinking, and
yeah.
then off you go.
Oh, you exactly right.
uh, so tell me,
Thank you for
how do
being
you
here.
spend? How do you still you still golf? I know.
No, no,
No, no. Okay.
I broke my hip
Oh,
playing golf
okay.
on a bet.
Okay. Oh,
You know, yeah, that's the
well,
only way I would break my hip, not falling or anything like that, not
okay.
common things like that. I
Oh,
bet with my foursome and swung too hard,
oh my
crack.
good. Oh, oh,
Yeah.
oh, oh
So
my
after I
goodness.
broke my hip, I've lost my balance. So I had to quit.
Okay. Yeah.
I can rumble.
So I know this will be redundant, but I will say it anyway. Just mahalo, mahalo for your your decades of public service to our collective communities throughout the islands and affecting so many people over the decades. Mahalo for that, and continued blessings and well wishes as you continue to be a. I think you're you're very. I can see you're still very cognizant of things that are going on, even there in the state of Hawaii and around, because that's just that's part of your DNA. I mean, that's
Yeah.
you. That's Pat Saiki.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity to
Aw.
tell my story. I mean, you're the first one who really has looked into the all the reasons why things happened the way they did.
Hmm.
Although the book does state the results, it doesn't actually explain all the ways in which things were done. And you have given me that opportunity to let it go and share some of these experiences.
Our
So I thank
pleasure. Our pleasure, Pat. You had said, I keep reminding myself that I first ran for office more than 50 years ago. A lot has changed in the 5+ decades, but as a
that's right.
result, there are generations in Hawaii and the country for whom the political battles of decades ago, and let alone 1 decade ago, is ancient history. So they need to know it's possible to lead, to bring about systemic change, even in the face of overwhelming odds. They need to know it's important to be willing to step into the ring and lead, and that
Right,
charge can result, if you have courage, to keep your focus and are willing to fight the good fight. And that's the spirit of my memoirs. I hope it inspires a new generation of civic minded youth, particularly young women, to step forward and be counted. And that's your book,
right.
The Woman in the
That's
House.
wonderful.
So go to
Thank
Pat
you.
Saiki, go to patsaiki.com, get the book, read about Pat, and it's been our absolute pleasure to have you on our Aloha Friday show, Pat.
Thank you so
Uh,
much. Thank you very
mahalo.
much.
My pleasure.
I
And big mahalo to Floyd behind the scenes over there. I know he is hovering in the wings.
Yes, right, right. He was always there, especially when I needed him.
Floyd, come on by, say hello. I know you're behind there, Floyd. Come on, let
Yeah,
our
come on.
friends come, Floyd.
Hello.
Floyd's an unsung hero. There's Floyd,
Okay.
our unsung hero. Thank you, Floyd.
Okay.
Mahalo. Thank you,
Bye.
everyone, for joining us. Have a great rest of your Aloha Friday. And to all of our friends, we say mahalo nui loa and aloha.
Aloha.